Mike Rob and Space Ghost Chad. We're going to follow up a tough Clemson loss before we head into Pitt week. How we feeling today?
Better than I did on Saturday, I'll tell you that. Man, that was harsh.
Definitely was. I mean, it was the number one team in the nation. They haven't lost at home for about 4 years. The best quarterback prospect since at least Peyton Manning. I think he's better than Andrew Luck, but that's a story for another time. And we got our asses handed to us.
Absolutely. I would say that the number one person on their team was Etienne, though. That guy was crazy good, and I think he'll be crazy good. He's an NFL running back now. Like he should have been this year. He shouldn't have come back, and we couldn't handle him.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how much money they paid for him to come back this year because there is no reason why he should have left. Shouldn't have left.
Yeah.
So before we go into each unit, we'll start with the coaching. Last year had a tough time against Venables. That's why Venables is one of the highest paid coordinators in the nation. Overall, what I knew Clemson was going to give us a hard time, but what made me the most pissed off afterwards was how we still had our chances to keep it close. It was 21-10 at halftime. The defense did their thing, blocked two kicks with the score right before the halftime. We came out third quarter. We should have had I was expecting second half adjustments. And then, of course, it was 3-and-out within less than a minute. I didn't appreciate his last year's play calling when he set up Derek King with too many deep throws on third and long. It was clear by the third quarter that they were stopping our run. Cam wasn't doing anything. So I would have preferred to see more screen passes to set us up, or over the middle passes to set us up. So maybe for it's 3rd and 5 instead of third and 12. And a lot of times I felt like at 3rd and long, the wide receivers weren't even going for the first down line. They were catching passes at still leaving 4 yards to the first down marker.
I agree. I would say the number one thing, though, is something that you and I talked about last week. We said that the key to the game was having about 200 yards on the ground, a legitimate running game. That's what Lashley said was the key, that Venables takes away the run. That's what he's known for. And if you establish the run, then we would be able to do all sorts of things off of that. And from the very first drive, we had technically a run play on the very first drive when we ran zone read out of the backfield. But that to me is not a running game. When you've got someone like Cameron Harris, it's supposed to be a power between the tackles, run the football sort of approach. And Cam got 8 rushes for the whole game. He got 0 on the first drive, and we had the ball quite a bit. So to me, Rhett set himself up for failure because from the opening moves, he went away from the thing that he said was most important. And when it didn't work effectively, he tried to kind of, do the trick play or two, and those weren't ineffective, but you can't do that every play. You can't throw it to Brevin Jordan to then throw it to Will Mallory down the sideline or down the field every single play. So because he didn't have that foundation, when it didn't work because of mistakes by the offense or good defensive play, it blew up in his face because he had no alternative. He couldn't start running the ball after not running the ball for the whole first half. Um, so he outplayed himself. For a chess match, he screwed up his opening and totally set himself up for failure, and there was no recovering from that, not against someone as good as Venables. That's never going to be, you're never going to recover from something like that.
It's a great point. The only thing is I felt like they should maybe run King more, especially like they ran certain reads, but I thought that they were just keying in on the outside. Spectre from Clemson was a monster, and I felt that they maybe should have involved Knighton more. But to your point, they definitely should have established the run more early. But by the time it's the third quarter and you're 21-10, then it's too late for that, and they should have by then. You're already setting yourself up for failure.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's kind of like I said, everybody talks about it like a chess game, but in my opinion, there are real principles from playing chess that apply to play calling in football. And literally your opening drive makes all the difference in the world as an offensive coordinator versus a defensive coordinator, and for setting the tone on either side of the ball. And the way that Lashley approached it, he specifically called a bunch of plays that were not in line with what he wanted to do. And he totally set the board in a way that screwed him from being able to make any other play calls for the rest of the night. And I'm not saying that like, oh, he was forced into not running the ball. He chose that, but there was no recovering by the time you get the ball back. Clemson had drives of 10 plays and 16 plays for their first two drives, and they're up 14-0. Now you're screwed. Now you're totally screwed, and there's nothing you can do about it as an offensive coordinator if you haven't tried to establish any sort of actual ground game.
Do you think maybe the game was a little bit too big for him today or on Saturday?
I think I think that he let the game become too big. I don't think it was coming in. Okay. I think before that first play where the defense actually did very well, and we can talk more about that, and they kind of screwed themselves with penalties, or the referees helped them along because of penalties. Either way, it doesn't matter. I think he saw the trick play that scored from 24 yards out, and he felt that he had to step up to match that sort of brilliance. He had to pull out his trick play thing in the first drive just to show them that we're not afraid of them. But that's not, he wasn't playing the other offensive coordinator. He was playing Venables. You got to be there to defeat Venables, and Venables was there to come after and blitz and, put 6, 7 guys in the box and send all of them and play basically nothing but man coverage the whole night and say, you can't beat us. And so I think that Rhett allowed the game to get too big by the time he had a chance to start calling the plays. But I mean, we listened to his interviews. I re-listened to them when he was on the Joe Rose show, and he very specifically said, if you can't run the football, you can't win championship games. This is the number one thing. He said throwing the ball creates a very small margin of error for you, for the linemen, for your quarterback, for everyone, if you are forced to only throw the ball. And they ended up throwing it an insane amount on that first drive. 8 out of 9 plays were passes.
Mm-hmm.
That clearly shows to me that he knows what it is that you're supposed to be doing, and he decided he had to pull out the trick plays super early on to counter or match the Clemson offense. Kind of like how Baker felt that he had to call these trick, delayed blitzes and shit early on in the season to match Rhett's brilliance. He had to show that he was just as good. And I think Rhett fell into the same trap trying to match the Clemson offensive coordinator, really the offensive play calling. And it totally ruined him because, again, you can't play the chess game for Baker. He's got to play his own chess game against the offensive coordinator. You got to play against Brent Venables, who is, been a defensive coordinator for 8 years because he gets paid too much to go to any other team. And he's a boss. I mean, he is one of the best at playing this game, and you took your eyes off the prize and got screwed.
Yeah, and we'll get more into the Pitt game later, but he's going to get that defense matchup this week and probably for the rest of the season. So I hope he's in this study room right now. So last thing I'll say about Phil Ashley before we switch to the units. One play call that really annoys me when I was rewatching the game is after King has that big run and early in the third quarter, we are on the 15-yard line, and then he be right before his interception. And what was with that deep ball call?
I mean, I think he felt that we had to capitalize on the momentum. I'm not making excuses for him because overall I could tell, everyone could tell that our receivers were not going to win any one-on-one matchups. It just wasn't going to happen. And he kept going to them. Why is it not Brevin Jordan going out there? Like the second interception to Mallory, where he was under pressure, so he short-armed it and didn't quite get it up there. I'm okay with that play call. You put Will Mallory one-on-one with someone, I expect him to be able, as long as the ball's in the area, he should win that matchup. And especially in the red zone, that's who should be in the back of the end zone, is a tall tight end who can body out the corner, not get pushed a little by the corner and fall over like Wiggins, and look for a flag instead of actually fighting for the ball. You put Brevin Jordan in that situation, he's fighting for the ball. He's not looking for a flag. But it was the personnel that I was most upset about, not the play call itself, but the idea that he was expecting our receivers to step up in some way, and it was never there, and there was no reason to do it.
I got you on that. That would have been a perfect play call for Brevin. And on the Mallory interception, now transitioning to more into King, I thought that was more on him than the play call. So it wasn't a bad play call by Lashley. King had a terrible game by his end. He's already come out and said, I wouldn't say terrible, but not one of his best for sure. A lot of drop balls by receivers. He already came out today and said how pissed he was. He's already talked to receivers a lot, which is great attitude, which we haven't had in years. So one thing that I'm really interested to see is this bounce back against Pitt this week. We'll go more into it later, but usually they screw up after a loss and it comes rolling in. So, but I trust King. He's not Jaron Williams. He's not N'Kosi Perry. So I expect him to make the adjustments. And also, it was raining. They were underthrown balls, but I don't know how much related that is. We said on the last pod, and honestly, every pod we've recorded so far, that I haven't been confident enough yet in King's deep balls. It was shown. They have to just get on page with receivers, but his rushing game is still a threat, and it was clearly a thing. As we said earlier, I wish we could have schemed for him at more rushes because that was the only thing they couldn't stop.
That's true. Well, and that's the thing. I have no doubt that King's going to show up and play his absolute hardest. I don't know if it's going to be better execution than it was against Clemson, worse execution, hopefully not worse, but he was a gamer. He never quit, even when we were down 30 points. He still, I mean, he took a shot running in to score that touchdown. So he had something and he got up. He didn't say a word. He immediately ran back to the huddle and, whatever, gave people high fives, but there was no trash talk, nothing. To me, that shows the kind of player and leader he truly is. And more than any media person could ever say, more than anything he could actually tell a media person, just watching the way that he finished that drive himself because nobody else was going to get it done. And he, again, took another shot and it was a losing cause. It didn't matter. He's never going to quit on this team. And I personally am never going to quit on him because that's what you need.
I agree with you. You'll never hear much Derek King slander on this pod. That's for sure. The last thing I'll say about quarterbacks is N'Kosi Perry, that one reception. I was interested. The only reason why I'm bringing it up because next year we have to figure out who our starting QB is, and I thought maybe it would be interesting to see Cozy in the spread offense. It was only one throw, but at this point, I just hope Tyler Van Dyke will be ready against Alabama next year.
I like Tyler Van Dyke a lot. I think that so in Cozy, I don't know. I haven't watched him in high school. Obviously, I'm not on campus. I'm not at Green Tree. Like I'm not getting all of the info that I'm sure would show us the kind of player, the kind of person that Nkosi Perry is. But I know that he's had disciplinary issues in the past. I know that this year he actually seems revitalized in terms of his interest in the team because I honestly thought he would decide to leave because he wasn't going to be starting this year and it was going to be like his big year and we had, all these pretty good freshmen behind him, but he stuck it out. And I saw some things where he was, on Twitter. When Rhett Lashley was mic'd up, he was very clearly bought into the program. So I think that Nkosi Perry went out there and said, I have to make a play. I got to be the guy. And that instinct is good, but you also have to read the room. This is a defense that has been crushing everyone. And you go out there, instead of throwing it away, you force the pass on your very first pass of the game. That's what I'm going to have problems with for Nkosi. I'm no longer worried about him not wanting to be here because that was all of the crap that he was getting in trouble with Richt and not even getting on the bus to go to LSU because he had disciplinary issues. But I think he is bought in, and I think that he could be an asset to the team, but he has to start using his head more. And I hope that hanging out with De'Eric for the rest of the year, he'll realize that that's the part that he can work on and improve on is, again, not letting the big moments get to him, but really trying to do his best with everything he's got, which doesn't mean throwing the ball even when you got nobody there. That's not your best. That's just you trying hard. That's not your best effort. That's just a lot of effort. So, I hope he understands the difference. I think that he has an opportunity to learn that because we got plenty of football left and plenty of opportunities for him to get on the field or to watch De'Eric, handle a different high pressure situation, hopefully with less rain.
Yeah, last thing I'll just say about that is on that whole trying to make a big play in the moment, he seems had to have that problem in the past. So that's like the only thing that's worrisome, that he's definitely matured a lot. as a human being, which I'm very impressed with, and he's become a great teammate. But that's the one thing is his decision making, and that's the one thing it seems like he hasn't learned on. So transitioning to the running backs, I'm gonna sort of count that game as a wash. I expect him to bounce back this week. There's not much. We've already talked about that a lot, the play calling. I'm sure Lashley will learn his lesson. I expect Cam to bounce back. Cam's a dog. Only thing I'll say is that I like to see Rooster used a lot more. And after watching ETN did what he did to us, I feel like, if not now, maybe he's too young, but at least in a couple of years, he can look sort of like that.
Well, Cheney had one rush and he looked great. He tore right through them. They didn't even see it coming. I don't know why, but they didn't. He went for like 8 or 12 yards, something like that. The longest run of the night. Yeah, it was this one touch. And so if not Rooster, Cheney looks like a boss and looks like he's going to, I mean, it doesn't seem to matter to him who he's playing. He's going to run the ball hard. And I honestly think that between the two of them, I don't know how fast Cheney is compared to Rooster. I know Rooster's lightning fast, but Cheney at least has that, already seems to have that mentality of you can't tackle me one-on-one. Like it's not going to happen. And when he keeps staying in the weight room, working out, he could very well turn into an ETN in that you can't arm tackle the guy. You're not going to be able to bring him down on the first hit. But yeah, between the three of them, they got 10 rushing attempts. The three of them got 10 rushing attempts all night. So it's impossible to tell how good a night they really had because they never got a chance.
Yeah, it's a wash. The one point I meant about Rooster is that we should use him more as in the short game passing, throw him like little screens, little dump offs, like how they use with ETN. And yeah, I definitely agree with the Cheney point. We should use him more. Anything else on the running backs? Because we have a lot to talk about the wide receivers.
Yeah, it's going to be more about the Pittsburgh game, but pound the rock. They want to put a bunch of guys in the box and blitz. You know, the way you negate the blitz is by running right at them because you've got your blockers set up. So even they can't, unless they're going to go goal line and it's literally nobody outside of the box except two, corners, in which case put your two tight ends out there and see if they win some 50-50 balls. You should be able to run dive 3-4 times in a row and really just punch them in the mouth. Now, you won't get a first down necessarily the first time you do it, or even the second time, but as long as you show that you are going to come at them, I think it will force the defense to loosen up a bit just from sheer exhaustion, wear and tear. And you milk more time off the clock than you do when you pass the ball 3-4 times in a row. So that's the only thing is I expect them to show up, but I expect them to get opportunities to show how hard they can punch somebody in the mouth through running the ball between the tackles.
Yeah, the only thing is that Venables did stack the box a lot, so I don't know if maybe that scared off Lashley against playing run calls. So
yeah, but that's the thing. That's what Venables does. And Lashley knows this. Like he knows the game way better than we do. He had all sorts of statistics on how good Venables is at stopping the run, and he said throughout and only in 15 minutes, I think he said it 2 or 3 times that Venables stops the run. We have to run. If we want to be a championship team, you got to run. So to me, it seems very clear that he knew that was going to happen. But like I said, before he felt that he had an opportunity to get his feet underneath him, he felt he had to go for, I think, some calls. And then the next time he got the ball, it was basically the second quarter, and they had run 26 plays, and we had gotten the ball for 1 possession. So I think he felt like he couldn't counter that without going to quick passes or whatever, all the passing, basically. So he knows better.
We'll just hope that this is a learning moment for Lashley. So getting into receivers, probably the grossest unit on the whole team right now. It's just really disappointing as a former receiver myself. And we just keep having so much hyped up potential about some of these guys that I'm just losing it. No outside deep threat. We knew they were going to make us go one-on-one. Wiggins, I'm not totally out on Wiggins, but that was just sad to see. I'm not going to give him too much shit for not coming up too much on those balls, but man, he's got to work on that. And it just right now it just seems like he can only get the ball in stride at this point.
And that's the best of the 3. I mean, that's the real sad part is that the best of the three is someone who we can only expect him to catch it if it's in stride. That's not good. My biggest thing with our current receiver crop, and there's nothing you can really do about this at this point. They're all about the same height. Like, yeah, they're all used in certain ways. Harley's the slot guy, and Pope is kind of, the quick screen guy, and then Wiggins is the deep threat. But they're all about 5'10" to 6'1". Like, none of them are extremely tall. None of them are extremely big. They're all fast. They're all quick, but they aren't all used as slot guys. And the differentiate, this guy's our deep threat because he's 6'1" versus this guy who's our slot guy because he's 2-3 inches shorter. We don't have someone who's 6'3", 6'4" in that position, and that doesn't make any sense to me. If you want to throw 50-50 balls, or you're going to have to, go get a guy who's at least 6'2", 6'3", 6'4". Like, I know we have them. I think we even have them on the roster. But they should be the focal point, because that's the only way that you can expect someone to win those on a regular basis if they have the physical tools to do it. And they just keep expecting these guys to show up and be a particular role player. They don't have the stats for it. They don't have the measurables to make that happen, and we keep expecting them to, and it's just not fair to them, I think. But also, they need to put in more effort. You know.
Yeah, I don't know how long the leash is on Harley and Pope before they just cut the cord as upperclassmen, but I would love to see more of Keyshawn Smith and Michael Redding, especially more Keyshawn Smith. He looked great even on this one catch. And the only thing is, we need to talk about Jeremiah Payne, because all I ever heard was how much he was dominating on the practice field, Reentry. Maybe he's not in sync with King yet. Does he have playbook problems? Was it COVID? Did he get set back because of COVID? I don't know, but it seems like maybe if we were to try out one guy that could be the deep ball guy, it could be him in terms
Yeah,
of size. Because all the other guys, as you said, Wiggins, Pope, Harley, they're like stick figures. They're like James Blackman at FSU. You can't expect them to go over let alone one-on-one deep balls, even just like a big third down conversion on 3rd and 10, having go over the middle and try to brush off a safety or cornerback and expect them to make a strong play.
yeah. I mean, they had a whole discussion on Twitter about how Pope. Someone thought that if Pope had gone to Alabama, he would have been much bigger and stronger and whatever. And maybe that's true. I feel like we have the same facilities as Alabama does. It's more of a drive thing, or it's more of just inherently he can't put on weight. I mean, that's also a thing. Like, if you're a small guy, you're a small guy. I mean, he's not short, but he's skinny, and that's just who he is. And I'm sure he's in phenomenal shape, but he doesn't have the weight. I played safety in high school. You played receiver. We had one guy who was insanely fast, insanely strong, but if I tackled him, he still weighed only about 150 pounds. Like, it doesn't matter. I could still hit someone at 150 pounds and knock the ball out. Like, it doesn't matter how much he can bench or squat. He doesn't have mass to him. And so, yeah, Peyton definitely has the size to pull it off. The couple plays that I noticed him on the field were short plays. They were plays where the timing was off. I definitely think I think we had him out there for the first drive, and he had to run that bubble screen, and he ran it wrong. And King overthrew him, but he also wasn't in the right spot for a bubble screen. He just wasn't. He was way too close to his blocker. So even I looked at some of the comments, and it was like, wow, that could have been picked off by the defender while he was being blocked by Harley. Well, either that's on King for being wildly inaccurate on a screenplay, or Peyton was literally running his route in the wrong spot right next to the line of scrimmage instead of doing the actual move. So I'm willing to give Peyton some time, not a lot of time, but I'm hoping that after now that he's been cleared and he's actually practicing full time with the team, that stuff will come together, because he'll have an actual rapport. I mean, theoretically, he's been out with COVID since the beginning of the season. So besides a very short spring season, which there really wasn't any, um, he hasn't been able to actually run routes with De'Eric ever.
That's a good point. So last thing on the receivers, they can't even get open, and I would expect that at least Harley and Pope And I know Wiggins is fast too. Like they can't even get open in the middle and like slot over the middle routes. They can't catch the ball. I don't know how much it did with the rain, but transitioning into tight ends, we talked about it earlier. We should use Brevin outside more. Even Mallory, he hasn't shown up at all this year. He has 3 catches and he can be used on the outside too. And hopefully we'll get Brevin back for the game because that'll be big for a pick. He was questionable today.
Yeah, well, so Brevin took a lot of hits. He had a couple drops himself. He didn't have a great game, but we did feed him the ball, I thought, fairly. Like, I think we tried to get him the ball even on the little, slip screens and stuff like that. And Clemson was keying on him because it's Brevin Jordan. Why wouldn't you? But he did okay. I think that it would be hard for him to have a monster game under any circumstances, but especially against someone like Venables, they're going to take him out. Mallory Mallory hasn't shown up, but he has. Like, for example, against Louisville, he had a 75-yard catch that got negated by a holding penalty. So he should have not only 4 catches, but he should have well over 100, 150 yards of receiving and a touchdown. And then even against Clemson, he was the target of that trick play, and they just basically grabbed him for pass interference instead of letting him score a touchdown. It's like, okay, well, if they don't do that, that's another catch, another touchdown, another long play. But Mallory, right now anyway, because of where Brevin is, Mallory is always going to be the trick play guy or the guy who they leave open because nobody else is trying to actually cover him. They're trying to double Brevin or whatever. So he's never going to have stats, but he is going to be in a blow up spot. And right now, the way that, let's see, Louisville, there was a penalty to bring it back. FSU literally gave him a concussion after he caught a pass to take him out. And then Clemson literally pass interfered with him to take him out. So I think everybody knows how good he is. I don't think that it's going to be any surprise if he does start showing up against these other teams. But the strategy so far has been to literally just erase him at all costs because they know they can't cover him. I think, to me, that's still better. That's more of an impact than any of our receivers have had so far. So I definitely don't want to be down on him. I just hope that it turns into real points because once they take him out, once they hit him in the head for 15 yards, we need to score, but he's not on the field anymore. So I think he'll get his shots, and I think he will show up in a big way. I don't know if it'll be against Pitt, but he's already made an impact without even being on the field that much.
Yeah, that's a good point. I definitely agree with you on that. I guess what my point is maybe I last year should use him more and more creative situations than just trick plays, especially with because I think he can play outside, big slot receiver too, outside. And
That's
especially when I was saying earlier about how these wide receivers aren't big enough to make big contested catches over the middle, and like there has to be a way. Especially everyone's in a key on Revin, and the Clemson, that was their game plan. They keyed on them and slowed them down. So there wasn't no hate on the tight end groups, but it just seems like, yeah, that Mallory, I just wish that it seems like such a weapon that we could use it more creatively.
I would agree. My biggest thing is use him. He should be the number 1 target in the red zone. It should be Brevin Jordan, but assuming everybody is trying to cover Brevin, inside of 20 yards, it should be Will Mallory all day, every day. We should not be throwing the
They
ball.
should both be out there at the same time on the outside on other because they're not people are not going to respect their receivers anymore. They're going to look at this game plan, and so honestly, like I would like to see more sets of Mallory and Brevin both on the outside, and then just let Pope and Harley just run in the slot and see if that helps them. But like as I said, you need to use them both on the same field at the same time because they're both mismatches.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, and do you want to transition to the offensive line?
Yeah, so it'll be quick. The offensive line fell apart. And it didn't help that the Clemson defense was able to just blitz all the time, right? That kind of comes down from the top. Everything rolls downhill. And everybody's looking at the offensive line and saying, these guys are terrible. They're just as bad as they were last year. I don't agree with that, but all of the cohesiveness that we had through the first however many games fell apart when they just started pressuring. And you could see, Ja'Kai Clark had so many penalties. He was definitely jumpy. He definitely let the game get to him, the moment get to him. And that obviously didn't help with the cohesiveness because I'm sure in the huddle they're going, come on, man. Like, seriously, it's the fourth time you've been called for a false start, like, or, whatever. Like, come on. Um, and even with all that, I think Corey Gaynor still is in the running for he's like, I think one of the finalists, semifinalists for I think the Remington, our
Yeah.
center. So we've got good players. And I think against Clemson, they were exposed, but I think that they broke down and they didn't work as a unit after things got tough. At least initially. I feel like they rebounded better in the second half. I feel like there wasn't nearly as many bad like pressure plays where there was no time for him to throw. There were still a few. They were also blitzing 7 or 8 pretty much every time. But they in the first half they definitely fell apart. But I think that they picked themselves up, and I think they'll be a lot better going forward. And I really think that they're going to be the unit that everyone's going to say, "Oh my God, they did so much better against Pitt than they did against Clemson," because they're going to rebound. But I think that they did the best they could under very difficult circumstances against Clemson.
And they did have some open pockets at times for King. So.
Oh, and the reason why he was able to run 80 yards was because the way that they picked up the blitz and they parted the Red Sea for him. They made sure that he could step up, and he like double checked to make sure that it was real, and then he took off, and you couldn't stop him. But that was all offensive line, in my opinion. They washed those guys like they were gone.
Yeah, and especially on his King's second half run that set us up before his interception, the blocking on that play was phenomenal. And yeah, I don't agree with anyone that says that the O-line is as bad as last year, because that's just not true.
Right.
Cool. So we'll transition to the other side of the ball. We'll first start off with Blake Baker. I mean, I can't hate on the defense that much. Clemson schemed us so well. And as I said earlier, we had our chances. The defense put us the offense in chances to keep the game close. They weren't able to thrive on the opportunities. So defense is always put back out there. They're probably gassed. The last thing I'll say about Blake Baker is this missed tackling is just getting old. And as you noticed, pointed out earlier about the blitzes, I mean, he's Manny's boy, and I just sort of hope we could upgrade from that. Any thoughts on that?
So I think I put this on Twitter. I believe that Manny is a good coach. I think that he's doing better and better. I mean, it's only really his second year. I think he's taken huge strides in recruiting, and he's taken better strides in coming with a game plan and staying focused and all of that fun stuff. But recruiting, in my opinion, goes to recruiting coaches as well as players. And he went out and he got Lashley, and that was a great get. He basically gambled on Enos, and that was obviously not a good get. But he figured out that you just got to cut your losses and you got to move forward. And he did that with Enos without a problem. And I think Lashley is far and away a better coach, especially for the kind of just athletes that we have, the setup that we have in Miami. I don't think he's willing to do that with Baker, and that is going to be the defining moment or characteristic for Manny as a truly awesome, great head coach that we should have for, a decade more at Miami, versus someone who we really like, but we can't really get to the next level with him unless he's willing to cut ties with his boy. And I actually think that Baker called a great game. I think that Manny probably helped with the overall strategy. And I think that overall he did a good job of trying to take away certain things. I don't think he focused on the right things. And that's just going back to what I had talked about last week. Etienne, you should have let run wild from the beginning and not worry about it. You should have been basically pressuring Lawrence the whole night and being ready for all that short screen bullshit. That's what you should have been playing the whole time. And they kind of did it, but they didn't make it a priority. The first time that Etienne ran the ball, he got stuffed for a loss, but they only ran the ball once on their entire opening drive. So great. Congratulations. You took away the run. They still scored a touchdown because they ran 17,000 screens and your guys sprinted at the quarterback every single time it was a screen. You didn't need 4 guys to run at freaking Sunshine there. You needed 1 guy to run at Sunshine and make him, basically bail. And if it's not actually, if it's planned and he's supposed to be running away from you and it's supposed to be a screen, you got three other guys on the line who are super athletic who should be eating the screen alive. And there was just no adjustments for that. So I don't know. I think that they fell right into what Clemson expected from them. And I just don't think that Manny or Baker will ever improve as coaches while they have each other to rely on to try and share the blame, prop each other up, not hold each other accountable. And I think they're both fine coaches. I just don't think they'll ever be great coaches, either one of them. Well, we'll never know because they're going to just continue to be in this codependent relationship together.
Yeah, that's what scares me. Plus that how they play the senior guys way too much. We'll get into the linebackers later, and I don't know if it's because of COVID mispractices, but the tackling was awful. And we both called it out before on our last episode how they were going to attack us with the quick screens, and they killed us with the motions. Amari Rogers, obviously ETN, and even the tight end 88 had a huge game. Galloway, I think it is, had a huge game against us because the motion was throwing them fits.
And to my mind, that's just a lack of personnel. I mean, at least the tight end. Like Rogers, I think our corners showed up more than fairly well. I think they all did a great job. And obviously we'll talk about them. But overall, I think that side of the game planning was solid. What wasn't solid is they didn't have a surefire way of taking away that tight end. And they didn't really have anybody who was supposed to be covering him. Like that was the thing. It wasn't clear to me anyway who they designated, hey, you got to take him out. It was Zach McLeod, you got to cover this guy. Half the time Zach was blitzing, half the time he wasn't. The other half of the time he was getting blown up on blocks. Like it was a mess because they didn't actually have a strategy for the tight end. So I think if we had lost because of the tight end, I think that's a win for Blake Baker all day, every day. But it was just that on top of all the missed tackles, on top of never getting actual sacks on Lawrence, just on top of everything, it was really painful to watch.
Yeah, I really wish we could have fit him more because I hate to see how cocky Lawrence got in the game, and that dance has pissed me off so much after he
Oh
got
yeah.
after he,
No. Now I didn't have any issues with Trevor Lawrence before. I do now.
I know he's only thing is thank God he's so good because I respect him a lot for his game. He's just so nasty, and I mean I'll give it to him. He's a gamer. I can't really hate on it too much, but yeah, I mean when you're playing him, he's gonna throw you fits and piss you off. But
Well,
you want to, yeah. What were you saying?
I already went on a rant on Spiked about what I think about Trevor Lawrence, so I'm not going to repeat it here. It's definitely not PG. I definitely have gone from seeing him as a high quality NFL prospect to someone who's going to get snapped in half. I just don't think he's not going to be he's going to be Joe Burrow, but I think that Joe Burrow has picked himself up and continues to get better even after getting sacked 7 times. I see Trevor Lawrence crying the first time that happens. I'm just saying. Etienne is going to crush it. Etienne, whatever team Etienne goes to, he is going to dominate on the NFL level. I did not see an NFL caliber player again when Lawrence played against us, and that's against the Blake Baker defense. So I'm just saying. Yeah, his stats looked fine, but they also had 2 fumbles, and they only counted one of them. There was an interception that Roche should have had that he dropped, and also should have been a 4th down. Oh, wait, it was a flag. Like none of that showed to me that Trevor Lawrence is, he might be better than Luck because Luck did not last that long in the NFL either. But I just don't
Good
see him
point.
as really a good NFL talent because of just his attitude. I don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. He seemed like he was playing to the cameras at all times. He was more worried about the cameras than the goddamn game. So, who didn't give a fuck? Etienne.
Yeah, imagine ETN on the chat on the Chiefs.
Oh.
That's a scary thought. But what do you have? What do you want to say about the D line's performance?
I think they were taken advantage of. I think they played hard. They played their hearts out, but they didn't get the coaching like we talked about to allow them to go next level. And that's because it's more than just being aggressive, right? It's the first time that they called Roche to go into the flat and take that screen away was brilliant, straight up brilliant. But he was offsides, supposedly. I still think that's bullshit, but whatever. Let's say he was lined up offsides, fine. for any number of reasons, that's a dead ball foul, and he shouldn't even have to be embarrassed like that on national TV or whatever. But they didn't do that the rest of the game that I saw. They didn't use our very very athletic DNs to take away those screens and let Nesta go after Lawrence. Like you only needed one guy pretty much every time because Lawrence was looking for all four of you to rush so he could throw it over the top on the short screen. That's what they were expecting. And nobody ever said, hey guys, let's go more with these drops to the flats and only send two or three guys up the middle on A gap blitzes. I'm not saying that would have fixed everything, but it would have made it a lot harder for Clemson to continually fuck us over on every single one of those slip screens and rocket screens and bubble screens all day, because our guys are athletic enough to do that. So I felt like they played their hearts out. I know that there are some people who are getting down on a couple guys for dogging it and not actually, putting their full effort in. I didn't notice that. Maybe it happened. But I would get frustrated too if I rushed the quarterback 20 times unimpeded and he just threw a little screen over my head and the coach never called a different play to say, hey, you know what? That's your responsibility now. Go take care of that for me. Now you're in a position to make a play. Now you actually feel better about what you're doing. They never made the adjustments, and that's not on them, but it made them look silly. It made them look talented, but not exceptional. And I know that they can be and they should be. So
Yeah, that would frustrate me too. That's the whole thing with Baker's play calling. And I get you want to create the blitz game, but he called all the wrong blitzes. And this reminds me of how out of place he always kept Rousseau last year, especially on the Pitt game, which is funny. So do you think, won't say much about Rousseau, but do you think he would make much of an impact, like much of a huge difference in the game?
the only way I think that Rousseau would have made a huge difference in the game is if he had basically said, you know what, coach, I'm gonna call my own play. Like if he had just basically broken ranks. And Rousseau may well have done that. I mean, he certainly has the status and credibility, even now, to basically just say, hey, you know what, you should be doing this, and people will probably do it. So maybe because he would have the enough standing to do that. But otherwise, I will say, like I said, there were a couple of plays, there were a couple of times when Baker called some really great contain plays and different things to basically mess with Lawrence, and they worked and they were great. And I only saw them it was like he was calling them as trick plays, and it should have been the strategy from the get go because they weren't trick plays. One was, God, what was the freshman's name? Not Sammy, but the other guy. I'm blanking on his name right now, and I apologize.
Corey Flag.
Flag. Flag ran it was a designed, not blitz, but contain. He literally ran from the middle linebacker position and ran to the outside to outside contain Lawrence, who was trying to run that way, as it so happened, because that's what he tried to do every time, and forced Lawrence to come back in so that all of our guys who had slant blitzed the other way to make sure to take away that were able to come back and eat him alive because we had outside contain on Lawrence. And I think that was the one sack we had. It was Jalen Phillips. That was great. That was a phenomenal play call. Why didn't we do that every single play? I don't know. Or some variation of it. Just pick a side, always have outside contain. By running your guy that way, you also take away the screen. Like that's great. That's a great strategy. Why were you considering it a trick play? I don't know. So that's why I just felt like our defensive line was never put in a real position to succeed. They were just go get him, go get him, go get him, and continually get frustrated when you get basically look like you're very foolish and can't read a screenplay. Well, that was the play call.
And
So
that's a great transition to the linebackers. I called it last night. Sam Brooks needs to play, or last week, Sam Brooks needs to play more, especially against ETN. I don't know how you're expecting Zach McLeod, who's slow as fuck, to go all over the field. I feel bad for the guy. I was expecting a lot for him this year, especially redshirting last year. I thought he was just need more of an impact, but he's way too slow, man. And they need to play Flag and Brooks a lot more. And to your point about the defensive line having too much pressure on them is because the linebackers were so slow.
I agree 100%. I we talked about it last week. I felt like Jennings and McLeod could not be on the field at the same time. You really had to swap in somebody else. Theoretically, you could have swapped in Amari Carter, but he got kicked out in the first half. By the time we got Gervin back, we already had lost the other safety, so that didn't go well. But theoretically, you put another D back in, or you put in both strikers because Frierson had himself a game. As we talked about, he needed to be the main guy. He did great. He showed up. He didn't do it every play. He had some mistakes, but he balled out. He realized he had to step it up, and he did everything he could. Him and Bubba Bolden were phenomenal. But those guys aren't linebackers, right? Like technically, the striker is not a linebacker position.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got, I mean, Sammy should have been the guy. They basically made Frierson cover Etienne the whole game. And, that's fine. I guess it worked, but it didn't because when you needed Frierson to come up and make a big tackle one-on-one, he's not going to do that 9 times out of 10. Etienne's too big. Like, he's fast enough to get there, but it's mostly arm tackles. And that's not on Frierson. That's on the fact that it's Etienne. You need to have Frierson rallying up to help the initial guy who's making contact. And the initial guy is supposed to be McLeod or Jennings, and that never happened. And Sam Brooks would have been that guy, and you got Frierson helping Sam Brooks. Yeah, those two would have eaten Etienne alive on all of those screens. Every single one of those little screen plays that Etienne took 10, 15, 20 yards, they would have been able to slow him down drastically because they would have been there to make a play. There was one play for the linebackers that they showed. It was the one, it was like 3rd and 14, and they did a screenplay to Etienne, shocker, and Jennings, who was the one who was supposed to cover Etienne, actually got to the spot. There was a blocker there, but he got to the spot. And everyone who was pursuing, because they were, 3-4 yards behind as always, because they didn't call play to allow our DNs to just take away that screen. Fine, they're chasing. Jennings gets to the block, and instead of blowing up the block and making sure the outside contained stays there, he tries to fight through the block when he thinks that Etienne's going to cut back inside to try and make the tackle himself one-on-one with a blocker there to take down Etienne. Not only did that not happen, Etienne just bounced it back outside, found the crease, the wrinkle in the defense. It wasn't a wrinkle. The guy fucking missed his job, which was outside contain, and went another 30 yards and got knocked out, right before the 2-yard line or whatever. That was a backbreaker. And that was because a guy who's supposed to be our, not senior leader, but our starting middle linebacker, who's supposed to be, the heart of the defense, he made a crucial error in his, just mentally. He thought he had to be the guy. And I don't think you can fix that. Like, you can't tell him that he's not supposed to do shit like that. That's who he is at this point. It's very disappointing.
It seems like he's always trying to make the big play too, the big hit.
Well, or he's overly hesitant. It's one or the other. Either he's like, I know exactly what I have to do and I have to be the hero, and he fucks it up, or he doesn't know what he has to do and he hesitates, and then he's too late, and then he can't make a big play. I'll say this about Sammy Brooks. He also is very hesitant, but you expect that from a true freshman, not a redshirt junior who's been a starter for, the whole year. When Sammy was hesitant, he still, when he saw, like, when he finally recognized what the play was, and it's not like it took him 10 seconds, it took him like a second or two at most. That's still a long time in football. When he finally read it, he would react, and his athleticism was great, and he made some just spectacular plays because he didn't try to overthink it. He was slow. He took too long to kind of see certain plays develop, but he read his keys. He followed followed what he's supposed to do, and was like, oh, here's the running back tackle. Like, it was great.
Mm-hmm.
It's what you want. He's coachable. It's wonderful. I fucking love it. He needs to be on the field every single play.
Exactly. The next big game that we have, I have no doubt that Sam Brooks will make the adjustments and figure that out.
Yeah, and that should be this week. This is a big game this week.
So moving on to the safeties, Bubba is our guy. He's a beast. He's the captain of the defense. If it wasn't for him, I don't even know if the score would have been. And yeah, I love him.
I mean, just on special teams alone, we actually had 3 blocked field goals, and all 3 were blocked by Bubba Bolden. That's insane. And he couldn't even see half the night because he kept bleeding out of his nose, and he didn't give a fuck. That is just, he's a monster. I love it.
And Amari Carter, I don't know why he keeps doing these big hits all the time, going for it. He's just too old to be doing this. You could even see Ed Reed look at him side-eyed.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
taking so yeah. So
again, I don't think Amari he was passed over on the first two, as in he didn't actually wasn't actually targeting on the first two. On the third one, they didn't even call targeting on him. Charlotte rang it in and kicked him out of the game, which is bullshit on so many levels.
mhm.
But even then, you're right. Why on earth would you put yourself in that position? You know they're going to call targeting on you. That's why Ed Reed's just like, come, use your head, man. Like, they're going to call you for targeting. It doesn't matter whether you touch them or not. If it looks bad, they're going to assume that you're targeting and they're going to kick your ass out. And we need you. And you got to be better than that. And so, obviously, Ed Reed already told them that. Whether he listens or not, we'll find out because we have the rest of the season.
Mhm.
And but I mean, your guy Balam was out there, but he got picked on so bad, and I felt horrible for him because you're picking on a true freshman. Like that's especially at safety or even at corner. Like those are at linebacker you have protection. You've got the D line in front of you to make a play. You've got the corners and safeties behind you to cover your ass if you screw up. As a safety, it's all you on an island. And of course, I'm biased. I played free safety in high school, and I know you have to make that crucial decision, that split second decision to cover 20 yards, left, right, middle, whatever. And all they did was basically force him to make bad decisions, and they picked on him the whole time. What I will say is that he did hit that tight end right on the goal line, who you were talking about. Big guy. I mean, the dude's huge. And Balam, even though the guy was like going to roll into the end zone and score yet again, Balam hit him as hard as he could right on the goal line so that they actually had to review the play to see if he crossed the plane or not. To me, obviously, it didn't change the outcome of the game. I just like his spirit. I like the fact that he had been miserable the whole game, and he didn't quit and just let him score that touchdown. And he didn't think it wasn't worthwhile. He put his body on the line and tried to hit a guy twice his size because you don't quit. So I like his moxie. I think he'll be a much better player, especially the longer he hangs out with guys like Bubba Bolden. And I'm sure he'll be much better than what he showed on Clemson. But it wasn't fair to him, right? That's Amari Carter's fault. That's not his fault.
And I didn't pay too much to Gervin Hall when he came back in the second half. Do you have any thoughts on him? But hopefully, either way for next game, he should solidify the defense more.
Well, the good news is that Bubba Bolden started showing up a lot more because Gervin was in the back instead of him. Gervin doesn't make spectacular plays. Maybe that's part of the problem. He wants to. He wants to be the guy again. Another like I got to be the hero. So he goes for big hits. He goes for whatever. But really, he's supposed to just be there to settle the back down, the secondary down, so that there's no wide open people being thrown to. And when he came back, that didn't happen. It did happen against when Balam was out there, it happened quite a bit. And once Gervin came back, it happened a lot less. And that's when Bubba Bolden really got to start eating, start being, all over the field like he likes to be and really causing havoc. I think Gervin Hall's best thing is that he allows Bubba to be Bubba. And so and as long as we don't see any glaring mistakes, which I did not, that means Gervin did a great job. It's like being a good goalie, right? You only get the spotlight when you fuck up, and he didn't. It was just really obvious when he wasn't in there.
Yeah, moving on to the corners, last part of the defense. Not much to say for them. You touched on it earlier. They've been playing awesome.
Ivy was great. I take everything back about Ivy. He has fucking balled out. He's reading his keys. He's doing everything technique-wise that you can ask him to do. Al Blades played some great defense. He didn't win every battle, and that's kind of the thing, is that when you have receivers who actually fight for the ball, you're not expected to win every battle. They're 50-50 balls for a reason. Obviously, with our receivers, I think someone, Kane's Legacy, said it's more like a 90-10 ball, or maybe it was Kane Films. But someone on Twitter is like, it's more like a 90-10 ball against us when we throw it up. There's maybe a 10% chance that we'll get a flag, and otherwise our receivers lose every single one of those. Otherwise, you got Al Blades going against, Amari Rogers, who's a great receiver, and he didn't win every single one of them, but he was there. He contested every single catch, and that's all you can ask for.
Yeah, and they use Amari more on the sweeps and stuff. So
They did.
yeah, they held their own, and they're not going to face those good of wide receivers for the rest of the year. We'll get into Pitt in a little bit, but they have one good receiver in Tassir Mack. He's decent, but he's not Frank Ladson or anyone else from Clemson. Daz Newsome against in UNC is nice, but besides that, this was a big test, and they proved us right, proved me wrong. I was skeptical, obviously, about Ivy, but in the past 3 weeks, he stepped up to the plate, and that's awesome. And that's good that I can have confidence in them from the rest of the season going forward.
Yeah, I think he's found his feet. He had one really bad game. Like I said, he wasn't doing what he was taught to do, wasn't using his techniques. Now he is, and he makes plays. And that's really, that's all you can ask for.
And moving on to special teams, one thing to talk about is Restrepo at punt returner. He got a lot of flack on Twitter, especially from Kev from Storm Surge. But honestly, I'm not losing confidence. It was a rainy game, and one of the plays he was looking at the referee and making a heads up play. And you can't hate on him that much. And I understand that you don't want. We already talked about this in all of our episodes. You don't want a freshman back there, especially during Clemson. But who else are you putting back there?
He did fine, and that's the thing. Our special teams won. Like, that was the only phase of the game that we won. And the reason why the game wasn't like 58-0, like it should have been, like it has been in years past, because our special teams didn't just stand up to their special teams. They straight up obliterated them. They, like I said, blocked 3 field goal kicks. One of them was returned for a touchdown. It was a planned touchdown. Ivy was waiting for the ball to be blocked to him so he could scoop and score, which is brilliant by Patchen. And normally, people don't give Patchen a lot of credit. I would agree with that. Guy kind of has to do multiple things. But at least that play call, he saw something where he said, you know what, we're going to be blocking these guys all night. Get ready for a scoop and score. And it worked out great. If the only thing that we have to say negative about our special teams is that Restrepo tried to make a big play as a true freshman against the number 1 team in the country and did no worse than Mark Pope, that's a win, because the other one, like you said, very, very heads up. He specifically was like pointing where the guy kicked the ball for Clemson, which made it basically he could do no wrong. Once they touch the ball, either it's our ball at that spot, or he picks it up and runs for a touchdown, or even if he gets hit and fumbles it, they don't get the ball back. He kicked it first, he touched it. It's now basically a free pass. And the fact that he knew that, asked the ref, confirmed it, and did it all in the same play, I mean, to me, he should always be our punt returner, at least until he starts scoring touchdowns as a receiver, and then he can teach the next punt returner how to actually return punts.
Yeah, and exactly. Playing against the number 1 team in the nation, don't need to go into that much more. Rainy, Clemson. He probably had, and he's not going to play a bigger game for the rest of the year unless we go back to the ACC championship. Which, if he's playing against Pitt and the rest of the schedule, he's going to have a lot more confidence. So if we do get back there, he's going to be fine. And you might as well teach him now.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, should he have tried to field a punt inside the 5-yard line on the bounce? No, he shouldn't have. He should have realized where he was. But then again, since he's on the 5-yard line and it bounced off of him, and he kicked it out of bounds, that's a touchback. I don't think he did that on purpose. I'm not going to give him that much credit, but it's like I don't mind any of that because, like I said, we've watched Pope do a lot worse this season already, and so for his first time ever being a starting punt returner, he's going to have so much more potential to actually do things the right way and even maybe get us some real punt returns. That'll be great. So I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, yeah, the only other person you can think about that maybe put back there at this point is Harley, but he has his own fair share of drops. And besides him, there's no other person besides any of the freshmen. You're going to have to put a freshman back there. So I don't know what people want from besides if it's not going to be Restrepo, I don't know who they want. So
I think he's good. I think that was a good call by Patchen. And like I said, the kid showed a lot of heads up thinking, which is just that's really all you can do with a punt returner because there's a lot of shit happening. It is kind of a set play, but it's way more wide open than any other. It's not like a run play where you kind of know where you're going. It's wide the fuck open. So someone who has that kind of open awareness, he'll get better with time.
For sure. Nothing to complain about the kickers and doing their thing. Helly, I think the punts had a little bit to do with the rain. They could have been a little longer, but to be honest, what are you going to do? So we'll move on to quick prediction of Pitt. So there's, as we said before, Narduzzi is going to have the same game plan that Venables did. He's going to load the box, make us beat us with the receivers. So hopefully our receivers and King are working on that chemistry this week. No one I'm too scared of on the offense. Pickett, we've played. This is gonna be the fourth time we've played him, so Manny knows what's good with him. I mentioned the wide receiver Mac earlier. He's really the only one on the roster that could give us fits. But I mean, Ivy and Blades will do their thing. I guess it's, and I don't know about the running back. Do you know anything about the running back?
No, I mean, overall, Pitt has been a very weird team this year because they've been ranked in the top 25, which, it's a weird year, so maybe that doesn't have too much. But they got beat by NC State by, last second touchdown. I just see Pitt as one of those teams like they have been traditionally. They probably will try to run the ball a lot more, and try to establish that more traditional, we run the ball and then we do play action and passing over it. I don't know a ton about their running back directly. I know that he's not a barn burner. He's definitely not Travis Etienne. Um, but they're going to play us tough specifically because they're expecting a close game. So the real question is whether our offense is able to break through, because when you play an aggressive blitzing defense, you open yourself up to the big plays. So we could break it and we could score a ton of points on these guys. And if we do that, that will make me obviously very happy, but it'll also completely upset what Pitt's trying to do on the offensive side. And they'll have to throw the ball a lot more. They won't have any balance, and they'll look a lot like us against Clemson. So that's very possible. That's a very likely outcome if Rhett Lashley gets his shit together. I don't see Pitt's running back as being the reason why we don't win. If we don't win, it's because our offense didn't figure it out,
Mm-hmm.
and that our defense isn't able to get them off the field. But again, it all starts with our offense, because the way that we play, the way that our philosophy is, having a lot of pace and tempo, and
Mm-hmm.
just generally trying to spread the ball around to a bunch of different people, a lot of people who I think are a lot faster than the guys that Pitt has.
Mm-hmm.
There should be plenty of opportunities for huge plays, long runs, and that'll make me very happy. But honestly, what'll make me the happiest is if we are able to grind out a game against them on offense on all phases, like we did against FSU, and score a bunch of different ways, because it proves that we still have that balance, that we haven't lost our identity as an offense. Because that's what happened against Clemson. We went immediately away from the things that made us a viable threat to their defense, and we went to literally the weakest point of our defense, just like Venables wanted. Our dude is going to do the same exact thing. So, hopefully against Venables Jr., we'll be able to do a better job.
Yeah, Lashley's a smart enough guy, and I trust him enough that he'll make his adjustments. I'm not too worried about that. I just personally would love to see King bounce back again, which we talked earlier. We're not worried about that. Just personally, from a personal level, I just want to see him ball out again.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see the wide receiver step up. Obviously, if Harley and Pope can get shit together this game, then that's it. The leash needs to be yanked. I don't expect them to already play the freshman again this game. I think they're still going to give them a little bit more of a leash, but yeah, I'm just getting really sick of it.
What I hope to see is what I really hope to see is a 50-50 split. So between our three starters, upperclassmen, and our three younger freshmen, whatever, younger, underclassmen, I want to see roughly, maybe a 40-60 split between snaps. And so that's not yanking the leash on those guys, but it's also acknowledging that we've got a lot of talent behind them. And, hell, they got more catches, like they got more yardage, as the three underclassmen got more yardage and catches and just overall looked better than the three upperclassmen. And so I think this is the game where you say, look, let's put them on an even playing field, have them play about the same number of snaps, same number of looks, and
Mm-hmm.
see who produces more. This is your chance to prove that you're better than the underclassmen, older guys. You got to produce and not just get 75% of the snaps or more and assume that you got to produce on the scoreboard. I'm not even worried about that. If Lashley is going about this in a better way than he did before, we shouldn't have to rely on the receivers to do anything. They
Mm-hmm.
should be out there and get their books, but it should not be the game plan is to feed them the ball. If we're doing that, then we're doing the same exact mistakes that we did against Clemson. And whether we win or not, that doesn't make me feel good inside at all about any of it. So hopefully it won't be on them, but they will get the same number of opportunities. That's what I would love to see.
Totally agree on that. For Pitt's defensive side of the ball, the big star is Paris Ford, the safety. That's the big key player. The defensive line is good. They're always good. But we should handle them. I'm not too worried about this. We should definitely bounce back. Any last thoughts before we get to the final score prediction?
I think that if Baker, since you already said Manny's got, Pickett's number, if Baker shows up with a comprehensive plan, a different look than what he normally does, and really continues to grow as a coach, I might take back what I said where I think he's going to be capped by the presence of Manny and Manny's going to be capped by the presence of him. I hope not, but I need to see him take it up a notch, not in the play calling per se, but in this overall strategy of we are going to have a very specific game plan to deal with Pitt that is different from what we did against Clemson because we actually plan game to game and not just this is our defense and we run it. So I hope so. I think you're right. I don't think that Pitt's defense is going to be able to stop our offense, but I need to see like 35 points minimum from our team for me to feel better about it.
Exactly, and I don't believe it's the same as in years past, but obviously as a Canes fan, you get scared about these Pitt games, especially coming after a loss. It would just make me feel overall a lot better if we can come out dominant, as you said, and so I can just put that PTSD in the past.
I really hope so.
So let's get to score predictions. I'm going to go with 38-23 Canes.
I like it. I would love to see that. I'm going to go lower because I'm worried that as much as I said all the things that they should do, I'm pretty sure that they're not going to do half the things that we talked about. So we'll never know if they were good suggestions or not. I do think we're going to win. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. I'm thinking 24-21, something like that. It might be a little higher than that, but I don't think we're going to break 35 points unless Lashley really is the chosen one, in which case I will take it all back. I will be so happy to tell him I was wrong next week. But, for a guy who clearly knows what he's doing and he's very smart, he's also fairly young. He's like 10 years younger than Venables. And this was his first real taste of action. And when things got real dicey, like I said, he tried to outsmart the other team. And I'm sure he's been hearing it all week that he's better than this, or, oh, maybe we were wrong about him or whatever. So I'm just hoping that he won't let that get to him and he'll stick with what he's said before, because it was the right call before the Clemson game. It's the right call after the Clemson game. He needs to now show it with his play calling. But I'm worried that he won't. I'm worried that he'll still try to dial up some craziness to show how much smarter he is than everybody else. And I think that will lead to maybe a flash touchdown here or there, but it won't lead to sustained 40 something points on the board like he did against other teams.
Yeah, I'm gonna re-edit my score. I'm gonna say 31-23 now. I think it's gonna be a lot closer at first, and then they'll probably pull away at afterwards. The spread is 10.5, I believe, which is a pretty big spread for Pitt, who's 3-1 and ranked. They're not that bad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to believe this is the real test, right? In my opinion, this is the real test of this team this year. How do you bounce back from a huge loss in a huge game with all the hype and hoopla and everything else? And now you're going to go play noon on a Saturday on the ACC network when no one's really paying attention. Do you show up and still take care of business because you're professionals and you're competent and confident still, regardless of what the score says at the end of the game, the week before? Or do you tailspin like you always do? And so the betting seems to indicate that they're expecting the Canes to be a lot better this year than they were in years past. The rankings even say that the Canes are better this year than they were in years past. I hope they're right. I think they are. I believe that we're fairly the 12th or 13th best team in the nation when we actually show up and do our thing week to week. So this will be the first time we have to truly do that on a week to week basis. And I hope that we come out, looking great.
Yeah, Clemson was obviously the biggest game of the year, but this is almost the way they bounce back is almost just as big, and it will prove, as you said, whether we're the same old Canes or if we've actually taken a step forward.
Here's hoping. We're hopeful. That's why we're Canes fans. We're still here.
Cool. So any last thoughts before we head out?
Well, Brett Lashley, you're probably never going to see this video, but dude, I still believe in you. I think that you are and will be one of the best offensive coordinators that the Canes have had in 20 years. You got to prove it this week. This is the week that you show everyone truly how smart you are by not giving in to what everybody says and just doing you and doing your game plan and sticking to it. So,
Well said. Well said. So that'll be it for this episode of 5 p.m. at Monty's. You can check us out at Spiked Rob and Space Coast Ched on Space Coast Ched on Twitter. Check out Pro Sports Edge for some blogs. Also check out Spiked, the college football podcast that's hosted by Spiked Rob. And follow us on Twitter for any live game feeds. I'm sure there'll be some plays that we'll be angry at for sure.
we'll try to entertain you as best we can, guys.
All right, later, guys. Till next time.
Take it easy.